in the middle. Then there was a lot of argument about that. Fair enough, but the shape of the Earth was quite established for a long time. For a long time, guys. Even the stories with Christopher Columbus, apparently the cardinals were telling him not to go because he'll fall off the edge of the Earth. And these were stories made up to support the flat Earth myth, to label Christians and religious people like dogmatists and people that won't look at evidence or proper science. It was to make them look silly. So it was the Darwinists and the evolutionists that created the flat Earth to label the Christians and the creationists to make them look crazy. So their idea, their theory, looked stronger. And I think it's happening again. I think it's happening again, guys. I think this is why this flat Earth stuff is kicking about YouTube and it's all over and it's been pushed in the mainstream media. It's what they're doing. It's what they've done to the Christians and the creationists. But I think they're using the same tactic on conspiracy theorists and religious people and anything else that they can get under that umbrella to label you as people that don't look at evidence. Just like the guys were doing it to the creationists. So I think that's why there's been this big push for religion and flat Earth. They keep saying it. It's like, as soon as you discover flat Earth, you can't be an atheist. You can't be an atheist when you discover flat Earth. So either way, they're pushing you into religion, flat Earth. Either way, they're pushing you into religion. It doesn't matter what kind of religion, if it's Christianity, Islam, New Age even. They're making you believe in dogmatic stuff. And they're labeling you. And it's the same with the conspiracy theories, 9/11, people that were looking into NASA, the fake moon landings, they're all getting put under the same umbrella of flat earther. And it's just, like I said, like the conspiracy theorists, the fake moon landing people, the people who are looking at NASA, they're getting labelled the same as the creationists got labelled back in the day. And it's been pushed by NASA. I think flat earth theory right now is being pushed by NASA, just like the Darwinists were pushing flat earth myth back then to label the creationists. I think that NASA are doing this with flat earth to label the conspiracy theorists lunatics, to discredit proper conspiracy theories, and to label religious people just total nuts that they think the earth's flat. And but a lot of, I've noticed on YouTube, there's been a big sort of backlash of Christians saying we don't believe in flat earth. They find themselves getting labelled right now, and it's probably happening with other religions. I've just not noticed the other religions, but I think this flat earth myth is a resurrection from the mid 1800s when the Darwinists were up against the creationists. And not to say that the Darwinists were wrong in their theories. Again, evolution is probably the most likely answer to why creatures adapt to certain environments and things like that, like the origins of species. But when it first came out, when the theory first came out, evolution, they never had that much evidence to back it. So they created this myth, and I think it's happening now. This is what it is, guys. There's no doubt. This is what it is. The flat earth theory right now on YouTube, because back in the day, in the 1850s, information couldn't get spread around like it does now. And now it's hardcore with the internet. So when they created that myth back in the day, they didn't think people were going to jump on the myth and believe it. They just wanted to label the creationists and the religious people flat earthers. They probably didn't think there'd be people in the public that would actually adopt the myth as a belief itself. And this is what I think is happening on YouTube right now. People are adopting a myth. They're actually seeing it being legitimate because it's so sophisticated. There's so much information on this myth. But Western civilization hasn't always believed in flat earth. Since the Greeks, Christians have supported a spherical Earth. Like most religions I've supported, it's the center. It's the whole heliocentric model that was disputed. But I do think that this flat Earth movement right now is a psyop. It's a psyop, just like the 1850s psyop flat Earth myth. That's what this is. And just like they tried to label the creationists and the religious people nutbags because they flat Earth when they never believed in flat Earth, they're doing the same now to conspiracy theorists, people looking into fake NASA, moon landings, whatever. They're doing the same thing. It's the same thing, and it's created by the same people. It's created by the NASA and the pop science people. And it's pop science. It's like it's the shape of the Earth is not to be debated in science right now. It's quantum mechanics. What's it? There's so many black holes, dark matter, parallel universe, string theory. All these theories, all these outlandish theories, seem like theories that were, well, evolution back in the day seemed like an outlandish theory. So black holes and quantum and all these things are getting challenged, and the best way to repel the opposition is to label them flat earthers. So a lot of people are now adopting this flat earth myth, and they're making us all look crazy. And the pop science will win because of it. Pop science created they've resurrected the flat earth myth. The pop science and Neil deGrasse Tyson, like proper science isn't Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye and all these guys with a theoretical astrophysics. If we want to talk about real science, about biology, chemistry, physics, this is real science. You've got the pseudoscience, like the myths that come up, like flat Earth. You've got the proper science, and then you've got the pop science. They're grasping at straws, but maybe some of it's right. Maybe Neil deGrasse Tyson, maybe they've got some grasp on it, but they've got no evidence to back their claims. So they're using this flat Earth meme to tar people. It makes them look better. It makes them look more legitimate. It makes Neil deGrasse Tyson look legitimate when he's arguing with flat earthers. When the flat earth myth was probably created by the guys who pay Neil deGrasse Tyson. So that's what it is. This is a big psyop, guys. And it's to label conspiracy theorists, religious people. It's to get you all under an umbrella as total dogmatic nutbags. We've never believed in a flat earth. So all these flat earthers out there that are telling you that man used to believe in, we've never believed in flat earth. It's the size was debated. It's the size of the earth. They've known it's been round. Well, when Christopher Columbus set sail, he thought he was going to get to the East Indies, but he ended up in America. So it wasn't the fact that he thought he was kind of like he was going to fall off the edge. They weren't sure if they were going to reach land because they weren't sure if the new world was out there. It's so this flat Earth stuff. It's a total psyop. It is. It's a total psyop, and you need to start waking up to it, guys, before it starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Because I know it's not that big the now, but it could. And looking at back then, it kind of picked up back then. Like right now, I fell for it. I fell for the whole fact that guys were getting burned at the stake because they were trying to teach the ball, and it wasn't true. Flat earthers will tell you this, that people got burnt at the stake for certain things, and religion actually supported a lot of science. Anyway, I'll go back through the theory itself, and we'll just sort of compare it to what's happening in flat Earth, because I think right now in YouTube, because I think it's the same thing. What happened in 1850 with the Darwinists and the creationists, with the flat Earth myth, is happening right now, and it's not just a label. Like I said, it's not just to label creationists and religious people nowadays. It's for conspiracy theorists and religious people and anyone that has a opposing opinion, really. So here it is here, guys, the myth of flat Earth. The myth of the flat Earth is a modern misconception that the prevailing cosmological view during the Middle Ages in Europe saw the Earth as flat instead of spherical. So it's a misconception. They keep telling you that in the Middle Ages that everyone believed in a flat Earth. It was untrue, and it's still untrue. During the Middle Ages, virtually all scholars maintained the spherical viewpoint first expressed by the ancient Greeks. From at least the 14th century, belief in a flat Earth among the educated was almost non-existent, despite fanciful depictions in art, such as the exterior of Hieronymus Bosch's famous triptych, The Garden of Earthly Delights, in which a disc-shaped Earth is shown floating inside the transparent sphere. According to Stephen Jay Gould, there never was a period of flat Earth darkness. There never was a period of flat Earth darkness. Among scholars, regardless of how the public at large may have conceptualized our planet both then and now. Greek knowledge of sphericity never faded, and all major medieval scholars accepted the Earth's roundness as an established fact of cosmology. Historians of science David Lindberg and Ronald Numbers point out that there was scarcely a Christian scholar of the Middle Ages who did not acknowledge Earth's sphericity, even now its approximate circumference. Historian Geoffrey Burton Russell says the flat Earth error flourished most between 1870 and 1920 and had to do with the ideological setting created by struggles over biological evolution. Russell claims that, with extraordinary few exceptions, no educated person in the history of Western civilization from the 3rd century BC onward believed the Earth was flat, and ascribes popularization of the flat Earth myth to histories by John William Draper, Andrew Dickson White, and Washington Irving. So, guys, the fact that they say in the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages or medieval Europe, everyone believed in flat Earth. It was a lot of rubbish. That's a lot of rubbish. No one believed in flat Earth. The myth that people in the Middle Ages thought that the Earth is flat appears to date from the 17th century as part of the campaign by Protestants against Catholic teaching, but it gained currency in the 19th century thanks to inaccurate histories such as John William Draper's History of the Conflict Between Religion and Science, and Andrew Dickson White's A History of the Warfare of Science with Theology in Christendom. Atheists and agnostics championed the conflict theses for their own purposes, but historical research gradually demonstrated that Draper and White had propagated more fantasy than fact in their efforts to prove the science and religion are locked in eternal conflict. So the 19th century was a period in which the perception of antagonism between religion and science was especially strong. The dispute surrounding the Darwinian revolution contributed to the birth of the conflict thesis, a view of history according to which any interaction between religion and science would almost inevitably lead to open hostility, with religion usually taking the part of the aggressor against new scientific ideas. So it goes on to say about Irvin, funny how he's got the same surname as the basketball player that's recently come out and says the Earth's flat. Irvin, he goes on to talk about how he made up in his stories about Christopher Columbus being warned by the cardinals that he was going to fall off the edge, and he actually kept the flat Earth myth going. This guy, he's a propagandist practically, just like YouTube back in the day. These guys were probably like your Eric Dubays, your Mark Sargents, and your Rob Skibas back in the day. Since the early 20th century, a number of books and articles have been documented the flat Earth error as one of the number of widespread misconceptions and popular views of the Middle Ages. Both E.M.W. Tillard's book, The Elizabethan World Picture, and C.S. Lewis's The Discarded Image are devoted to a broad survey of how the universe was viewed in Renaissance and medieval times, and both extensively discuss how the educated classes knew the world was round. Lewis draws attention to the fact that Dante's The Divine Comedy, about an epic voyage through hell, purgatory, and heaven, the earth is spherical, with gravity being towards the centre of the earth. As the devil is frozen in a block of ice in the centre of the earth, Dante and Virgil climb down the devil's torso, but up from the devil's waist to his feet, as his waist is at the centre of the earth. Geoffrey Burton Russell refuted the prevalence of belief in flat earth in a monograph and 2 papers. Louise Bishop states that virtually every thinker and writer of the 1,000-year-old medieval period affirmed the spherical shape of the earth. Although the misconception was frequently refuted in historical scholarship since at least 1920, it persisted in popular culture and in some school textbooks into the 21st century. And I think it's happening right now, guys. It's happening right now. This is what the flat earth is. It's a myth. And it's a myth used right now on YouTube to discredit conspiracy theorists, people who challenge pop science, which includes your black holes, quantum simulation theories, Big Bang cosmology. Maybe it's a Big Bang. Maybe it's a whole Big Bang cosmology. Maybe the guys behind the Big Bang are the people that are putting out the flat earth myth, pushing it to discredit people who challenge them. And this is what I think it is, guys. It's like science versus religion. And this is the conflict thesis. The conflict thesis is a historiographical approach in the history of science which maintains that there is an intrinsic intellectual conflict between religion and science, and that the relationship between religion and science inevitably leads to public hostility. The thesis retains support among some scientists and in the public, while most historians of science do not support the original strict form of the thesis. And it goes on about Galileo. It's like it's more misconceptions. The Galileo affair is one of the few examples commonly used by advocates of the conflict thesis. Maurice Finocchiaro writes that the Galileo affair epitomizes the common view of the conflict between enlightened science and obscurantist religion, and that the view promotes the myth that alleges the incompatibility between science and religion. Finocchiaro writes, I believe that such a thesis is erroneous, misleading, and simplistic, and refers to John Draper, Andrew White, Voltaire, Einstein, Bertrand Russell, Karl Popper as writers or icons who have promoted it. Finocchiaro also describes as mythical the notion that Galileo saw the Earth's motion, since the direct observation was only possible in the 21st century, and that the idea that Galileo was imprisoned since he was actually held under house arrest. He notes that the situation was complex and objections to the Copernican system, including scientific, philosophical, and theological arguments. The Galileo affair was a sequence of events beginning around 1610, culminating with the trial and condemnation of Galileo by the Roman Catholic Inquisition in 1633 for his support of heliocentrism. Nothing to do with flat Earth. In 1610, Galileo published his Sidereus Nuncius, Starry Messenger, describing the surprising observations that he had made with the new telescope, namely the phases of Venus and the Galilean moons of Jupiter. With these observations, he promoted the heliocentric theory of Nicholas Copernicus, published in De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium in 1543. Galileo's initial discoveries were met with opposition with the Catholic Church, and in 1616 the Inquisition declared heliocentrism to be formally heretical. Heliocentric books were banned, and Galileo was ordered to refrain from holding, teaching, or defending heliocentric ideas. So the way flat Earth make out it was always this thing against flat Earth, but it wasn't. It was heliocentrism. There was a dispute about heliocentrism, and maybe the whole Galileo affair here is what prompted the Darwinians in the evolution guys to resurrect this myth when they came out with their new theories, because they feared the same dogmatic kind of approach. But like I said, just because these guys created a myth to repel their opponents, it doesn't mean that what they were saying was wrong, because the theory of evolution, it looks like to be the most, it's the closest thing we can actually sort of, it's the closest thing we can't just say we appeared here. It looks like we have evolved from some kind of creatures. I'm not saying totally 100% that we've evolved from monkeys or apes or things like that, but it looks to be the closest explanation for it. And you can see why they've maybe invented this flat earth thing to make other people look crazy, the people that are their opponents. And it's just, I think it's happening now on YouTube, guys. It's the same thing. They've resurrected this flat earth myth to label conspiracy theorists and people, religious people as well, conspiracy theorists, religious people, anyone that has doubts, anyone who sort of speaks against authority, they'll be labelled under this. And you can see it with the whole anti-Semitic and the New Age, and you've got anarchy, socialism, anti-capitalist, anti-science. It's all creeping into the flat earth, and it's all umbrellaing us. Like it's umbrellaing everybody under one thing, and it's just nutbags. They're gonna try and make us look like nutbags. And it doesn't matter if you believe in flat earth. If you try to debunk the moon landings, you're probably going to be labelled a flat earther soon enough. If you're trying to debunk 9/11, people are probably going to use flat earth on you eventually. So I think this is a tactic used right now to repel opposition to pop science and to governments which have conspiracies. And we're all getting labelled with it. And I think just gullible people are actually adopting this myth, and they're keeping it going. They're keeping it going. They're like a disease. They're keeping this myth going, and everyone's getting labelled the same. So anyway, guys, it's something to think about. It's definitely something to think about. I've tried to highlight it because I think that this is what's going on. This is exactly what's going on, guys. Anyway, I'm going to make this short and sweet, just so people get the message, because I went down different avenues in my last one, and I just want people looking at this flat earth myth and why I think it's been resurrected to label everybody the same. It's nutbags. Anyway, guys, have a good day.